Sports fans, I hope you all are enjoying this off season as much as I am. I had the unique opportunity to really get down and dissect recruiting. That's a very challenging yet rewarding portion of covering college football sports. As we go into the 2019 season, there are going to be some games at the beginning of the season that are going to be very, very interesting and intriguing, and definitely, if nothing else, to get the blood going of the fan bases early into the season. And one thing I like is with SEC football, when they have the opportunity to face, pretty quality Power 5 non-conference football games. Among those that I'm going to talk about in this particular video is Alabama and Duke, Georgia and Notre Dame, LSU and Texas, and Auburn against Oregon. I think those are very, very interesting matchups. They are going to be consequential, especially because of recruiting and national exposure. And I hope you all enjoy this one. You all take it easy. There was a recent poll that came out of the power rankings to begin the season, and 6 SEC teams were featured in that particular power ranking. Alabama, obviously, was among one of those and will face a non-conference Power 5 opponent in their season opening game in the Chick-fil-A Football Classic, which takes place in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, Alabama is no stranger to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, as they have appeared there several times in the SEC Championship and as well in the national championship game against Georgia, where they won in the final seconds of that particular football game. So when we look at this game between Alabama and Duke, no one really is expecting Duke to pose much of a challenge, but this is still an intriguing matchup, by the way. Now, when I look at this at the surface from proximity standpoint, it actually makes good business sense to play this game. Duke is only 5 hours away from Atlanta, and they're used to coming to Atlanta because they face Georgia from time to time in the beautiful Bobby Dodd Stadium downtown Atlanta. So this will be an excellent opportunity for their program to get some exposure and to play in a very nice venue, and also the entertainment will be spectacular. Labor Day in Atlanta is absolutely awesome. Now, Duke does not return a starting quarterback off of a team that went 8-5 overall, 3-5 in the conference. Duke will probably not, like I said before, they won't pose much of a challenge for the whole game, but could give Alabama some looks that could prove very, very beneficial as Alabama begins to get into conference play. Now, optimal quarterback play is going to be very crucial for Duke, and it's going to be a challenge because Duke is going to have to replace excellent quarterback Daniel Jones, who wisely declared for the NFL during the offseason, but they're going to look for Quentin Harris, who appears to be the heir to the throne of the quarterback at Duke University. Now, one thing I did see with Harris on film is that he's very athletic. He has great vision in reading coverages. He has a very nice fade route that he likes to throw, and he has a very strong arm. And from the looks of things, he appears to have some type of dual threat tendencies. Now, Alabama will be loaded, ladies and gentlemen, in the number one recruiting class. Just the fact that Alabama has Tua Tagovailoa, Henry Ruggs, Devonta Smith, and Jerry Jeudy makes this offense deadly good and will be very dangerous for offensive coordinators to prepare for. And then you got to mention the running game with Najee Harris returning. I think Alabama is going to be very good this year. They're going to be a very good football team, but they don't need to take Duke lightly. Duke is a team who under Cutcliffe has had some success recently. They've had some winning teams, not necessarily, the 11-1s and really, making a challenge for Clemson. But this is just no team that you want to just look over because they do have some incredible athletes on this particular football team. Now, one thing I'm going to be looking for is the improvement and the development for Alabama in the secondary. They struggle mightily at some points of the season, which proved to be costly. A lot of misassignments. Very athletic back there, but a lot of times you could see the confusion as to what they were being asked to do. And that showed up very, very bad in that Clemson game where they surrendered a 44-16 game where the receivers just had a field day with their secondary. So I think this is going to be a very entertaining game, and it's going to give some information as to where these two teams, where they stand as they come off of fall practice and get ready to get into the rigors of their respective conferences. So don't take this game lightly. I think Alabama wins the game, but I think it may be a little more entertaining than some of the outside looking in people may give credit for. Another intriguing SEC non-conference Power 5 matchup to note is Georgia against Notre Dame. Notre Dame takes the first-time trip between the hedges in Athens, Georgia. I think this is a great home-and-home series. As a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, in 2017, I pin dropped this particular game for Georgia that would be a game-changing, program-altering victory if they could go up to Notre Dame Stadium in South Bend and pull off the victory. And sure enough, with some heroics and some huge plays, Georgia was able to do that. And that game, in my honest opinion, led the streak that led Georgia into the college football playoff, completing a miraculous comeback from behind win against Oklahoma and just surrendering the national championship in the final seconds, obviously in overtime in that particular game. But since then, Georgia has had an incredible amount of success, and this is again a checkpoint for both Georgia and Notre Dame. Notre Dame had an incredible season last year, 12-1, and made the college football playoffs. Ironically, Georgia was just knocking on the door of the college football playoff. If they would have been able to pull off that victory over Alabama, would have been right there in it. Both of these teams, I think, have a unique opportunity to really, really make a statement early in the season, getting a huge non-conference game. This is a very marquee non-conference game. Notre Dame, obviously one of the faces of college football at large. You can't mention college football without having Notre Dame at least in either that sentence or the next couple of sentences. So this is going to be huge from a perception standpoint to have a team like Notre Dame come to Athens, Georgia, to play in a huge football game. Now, here's what I want you guys to look for. Look for Boykin Miles, receiver for Notre Dame, to really, stretch this Georgia secondary out, because we need to see early on how this secondary will play without the service of DeAndre Baker, who decided to go to the NFL, and he was very good at anchoring his side of the football and to help leverage out the Georgia defense in general. Now, for Georgia's offense, I look for them to be very, very good this year with DeAndre Swift returning, and obviously Jake Fromm, who is improving from year to year at quarterback. Look for him to be an all-SEC quarterback this year. And also, I think, Georgia has access to some very talented wide receivers. Also coming in the offseason, being able to flip George Pickens from Auburn, which I think will be very, very big in adding some much needed depth to the wide receiver position, as Georgia lost their tight end Notre and also lost Riley Ridley, who, a lot of people thought he would have come back this year and had a, 600-700 yard receiving game, but decided to go on to the NFL and pursue his career outside of or beyond the college ranks. Now, Georgia Bulldogs, 11-3 last year, 7-1 in conference play. I really think Georgia's going to have a pretty good season. This is going to be a little bit more challenging of a schedule than normal, having Notre Dame come to the house. Also, late in the season, they're going to be playing against an Auburn team who's going to be coming off of a bye week. And then a couple of weeks later, we'll have to play, in my opinion, will be a much improved Texas A&M team. So look out for this particular game as one of the top games that SEC power ranking ranked teams will have to play early in the year. I really like this game between Georgia and Notre Dame. Will be a nice litmus test to see where these two programs are coming into 2019. LSU and Texas, man, this could be one of the most intriguing games of the power ranked teams out of the SEC who are going to be playing high consequential Power 5 non-conference teams to begin the season. LSU and Texas kind of coming off of similar seasons, had a lot of questions answered as to where their program is headed. And when I think about this game, too, I really think about the recruiting consequences of this game as well, because LSU really likes to dance over in Texas when it comes to recruiting. LSU has at least 18 players on their football team from the great state of Texas. Anyway, when we look at this ball game, we have two football teams coming off of huge bowl victories. LSU finally able to silence UCF in the Fiesta Bowl. UCF had a very, very long winning streak, and LSU was finally able to silence the UCF Knights in that particular football game. Also, Texas coming off of a very aggressive win against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, and I think that's going to go a long way in helping to build momentum for both of these teams in the off seasons. But both of these teams have some challenges as well. You know, when I look at this, I think the gameplay of both quarterbacks are going to be key. Joe Burrows is going to have to prove that he has what it takes to be a high-level SEC quarterback, and he has proven that in key games, including the Georgia game and including against Auburn, was able to really show those signs of maturity and ingenuity to make those big plays. And he's going to have access to Jonathan Giles, Justin Jefferson, and Terrence Marshall at receiver. So they have some chemistry together going into this season. So I think that's going to be very huge for LSU going into what I think is a very, very good matchup, because it's a possibility, because of proximity, that LSU could easily be in the Big 12 and have to face Texas on a yearly basis. So I think this is a very, very good matchup from a geographical standpoint. Very, very good matchup in the fact that it's an on-campus, non-neutral site matchup. I think this is going to probably be the game of the day in Austin, Texas. And Austin, like I said before, Texas is kind of in a similar boat as LSU, as they come off a very good season and is going to be really relying on their starting quarterback, Sam Ehlinger, who has a lot of ingenuity. He's very strong. He doesn't mind running the football, and he likes throwing the ball downfield. I think that's going to be very key in this ball game for Texas. And LSU also has to replace two key starters on defense, Devin White and Ontarius Greedy Williams, which is going to leave a little bit of a hole in that LSU defense. So early on the onset, we're going to be able to see where these two teams stand as far as replacing some very key personnel from the year before. But like I said before, going into the offseason, it's nothing like having those key wins to help build some positivity, help build some momentum. Both of these teams had some incredible recruiting classes. We'll get to see how that pans out. But more so from a recruiting standpoint, this game, I think of all the games that are being played, has direct consequences, because LSU loves to dance in Texas' backyard to get those recruits. Like I said before, having at least 18 players currently on their football team who is from the great state of Texas. So this will be a huge game. We will have predictions on these particular games as the season goes on, but I just want to get you guys ready for these big Power 5 non-conference games that the SEC is going to have to play early in the season. As we continue coverage of power-ranked teams in the SEC who are going to be facing some very high-consequential non-conference Power 5 matchups early in the season, we have to feature Auburn versus Oregon. Auburn and Oregon will probably be at least a top 15 football game going into this season. A lot of sports analysts think that Oregon should be ranked in the top 10. Oregon coming off of a 9-4, 5-4 season. Auburn coming off of a very disappointing 8-5 season, including a huge victory over Purdue in the Music City Bowl. Now, when I look at this particular football game, proximity of where the game is going to be played is very important. I think this is going to be great for national exposure for both football teams. I think Auburn has an opportunity because Auburn has an opportunity to get some exposure in that Dallas area where the SEC likes to recruit. It's a hotbed for recruiting in college football in general, but it gives Auburn a chance to get a little bit of exposure out in that area against a marquee up-and-coming, again, team. This is, like I said before, this is a matchup of the 2010 a rematch of the 2010 national championship with two very talented teams that are going to be facing each other and going to really, really challenge one another in the first game of the football season. Now, when I look at Oregon, I'm very excited about what I see, especially on the offensive side of the field. I think Justin Herbert will be a very, very he'll be in the first round as a quarterback. I think he does an incredible job as a quarterback. He's tall. He has a very strong and accurate arm. He has great vision when he's looking at those coverages, and he has the ability that once that rhythm gets going with the Oregon offense, he's able to push that ball down the field. So I think his play and his ability to, really fight through what I think is going to be some pressure that's going to come from Auburn is going to be key in as far as Oregon's success in this game. And he has some great receivers to throw the football in Davis, Daywood, Jalen Redd, and Johnny Johnson. Those guys have speed, and they're able, like I said before, to stretch the ball down the field and challenge Auburn, who will still be youthful at that linebacker position. And, still kind of trying to figure some things out at the cornerback position. The Auburn Tigers coming this year really with some questions that they need to answer at the quarterback position very quickly. Some of the options we're looking at is Malik Willis, Joey Gatewood, and Bo Nix will probably push for that starting job at that position. That's going to be very key to get off to a very good start offensively. Auburn has a plethora of weapons at the receiver and running back positions, which will keep a lot of teams off balance. But I think the key to this football game for the Auburn Tigers is the play of the defensive line. Usually when Auburn or any SEC team has played a Pac-12 conference, the difference in the game was up front. And I think Auburn has an excellent opportunity to have some control up front with the defensive linemen that are coming back, including a huge return for Derek Brown. So we're going to be looking out for this game, which I think is going to be a very, very good matchup between, two very, very, very good football teams, two very, very competitive football teams, prideful programs. I think Arlington that place is going to be rocking. So as we round this thing up, man, we really look forward to the Auburn and Oregon football game to begin the 2019 season. Y'all take care.